On today's podcast, we sit down with renowned A&R executive Michael Goldberg from Rick Rubin's record label, American Recordings. We discuss how the criteria for signing artists has evolved over the last 5 years, how his partnership with Rick Rubin has influenced his outlook on signing and developing artists, the role music publishing plays in developing artists, how success has been redefined for artists today, and much, much more. You don't want to miss it. Insiders, are you ready? Welcome to MUBUTV's Music Business Insider Podcast, where our mission is to educate, empower, and engage artists and music business professionals who are dedicated to having a successful career in the new music industry. Here are your hosts, Rich Ezra and Eric Knight.
Welcome back, Insiders, to another episode of the MUBUTV Music Business Insider Podcast, where our mission is to educate, empower, and engage your music career. On today's episode, we welcome Michael Goldberg, an A&R executive with Rick Rubin's American Recordings. We discuss his musical criteria for signing artists, how many of the artists begin at the publishing company, and what he's learned from working with Rick Rubin over the last decade. You don't want to miss it. Welcome back, Insiders. Today, we have a very special guest with Michael Goldberg, who is an A&R executive for Rick Rubin's label, American Recordings. Michael has been around. This was an interesting conversation because he's not only been a producer, but he's also been a artist manager as well.
Right.
So he's coming to the whole aspect of signing talent from two different points in terms of dealing with artists. And we had such an interesting conversation, you and I, with him, because he spoke about a lot of things that I thought were very interesting. Number one, the specific factors that he looks for are musical only.
Yeah.
He doesn't have all of that other, criteria or elements, which so many other people that we've talked to seem to have today. It's strictly from the musical perspective, which gets into other factors that we'll be discussing.
Well, I think it's part of the culture of Rick Rubin and American Recordings, their history and who the artists, if you look at the artists that they've worked with, it's really, you could tell it's that definite music part first, and then everything else around that comes after,
Very, very much so. And Rick has a, impeccable track record. He was also one of the executive producers, Michael of that incredible documentary.
Yeah, your favorite Shangri-La, which we've talked about at length. Yeah.
We have, because, and I'm always recommending it to you Insiders on if you want to see a great documentary that captures
creativity, the art
of creativity and how to pull it out of people.
Right.
I mean, that's easier said than done.
Right.
You got to watch this because Rick really
He's a master at that.
He's a master at that.
Yeah.
And, if you think it's just, go into a studio and say, go, it doesn't work like that. And so how do you pull things out of people, which is very interesting.
One of the other, speaking of documentaries that Rick Rubin is featured prominently in, is also the making of Blood Sugar Sex Magic of Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Right.
That's another great where you see him pulling out that whole idea of pulling out the essence of the artist. I mean, because at that time they were at a creative crossroad,
right?
If you recall, and that was
their breakthrough, the
breakthrough album that sold millions and millions of records. So and then of course, one of the other points that I thought, which we were speaking of the subject, was working with Rick Rubin and his experience with Michael working with Rick directly for many years, and how that has developed.
Absolutely, and how it's influenced his choices and his outlook on artists. Definitely it has. And as I said, the other interesting thing about him is, his experience as a producer and a manager, going off of your point, has influenced his creative decisions in terms of who he signs, what he signs. Also, the other thing that I thought was really interesting was how he spoke about the fact, which many other people haven't, and I guess in his particular case he could, he often will talk about the writing aspect and signing them to publishing deals first before the recording, and to develop them from the angle of writing and getting better and better and better and providing a vehicle to do that.
Correct.
That's an interesting perspective, which gives me an insight into the kind of artists, meaning that you have to be a writer,
correct,
in order to attract him in the first place.
Exactly. That's probably their number one priority, that they're a writing artist. And then also another point that I thought was great was how so many independent artists breaking through has changed the type of artist that can break through in today's market.
Oh, without question. I mean, you and I talk about this all the time. The marketplace, the culture of music has radically, and I mean radically changed because of that point. because artists now have the ability, more than any other time in the music business, to control their own career.
And with that, insiders, sit back, relax, and enjoy our featured conversation with Michael Goldberg.
Michael, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for doing this. We really appreciate it. You know, given your extensive experience and multiple roles, I might add, in the music industry, how has the criteria for signing artists evolved over the last 5-10 years for you, or has it?
Right. It has not, really. Most of my career, I've been working for Rick Rubin. So it hasn't changed. It's always been about the talent. And that's the only thing we look for. We're not looking for a certain number of streams or a certain number of likes or any of that. It's literally just about, do we connect with the artist and do we like what their message is?
Okay.
Amazing. Huge Rick Rubin fan, and thank you so much for joining us, Michael. This is Eric. I want to ask you, what factors do you prioritize when considering new artists for American recordings? You kind of touched on it just now.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's really, most of the artists that we work with are self-starters and self-motivators and have a vision and have a path, and they know exactly what they're going to do, and we're just there to support them in any way we can. So that's really our job. We end up signing way more artists to our publishing company because we look at that as their first deals, and then we can grow with them and really take that first term of 3 years and just help them grow and develop as people and as artists.
Great.
Let me ask you, how has your experience as a producer and as a manager influenced your A&R decisions and strategies in identifying artists? And it's sort of a deep dive question because you've worked in many areas of this business, and just sort of getting granular on your particular experience with this job.
Yeah, it's like, it's a little difficult to answer, but again, I think someone on our panel was talking about, it's like looking, when he knows, he knows.
Yeah.
And I feel that as well. It's different if I'm looking at an artist for that maybe I want to work with on something separate. But as far as like the Rick Rubin business, it is purely just something that we see, and we know that Rick is going to see the same thing. Yeah, it's just like, again, it's that drive, and it's that self-starter, self-motivation.
I feel like a lot of it too is gut instinct. Rick has based his life on basing things on gut instinct. I'm just wondering for you.
It is for sure, and we definitely go on our gut. We'll know. I could hear something that it interests me, and then I could sit and meet with them, and then it doesn't interest me. So
talk about that because that's the non-creative quality.
Yeah,
there's something
that doesn't resonate or connect.
We definitely look for people who are really super focused on their career, and they know they're getting there no matter what, with us or not.
Yeah,
it's going to happen for them. So, but yeah, I mean that doesn't happen that often, but. Yeah, we definitely look for, I don't know, it's just a certain type of person or band with that mentality.
Given your collaboration with Rick Rubin since the 90s, how has that partnership influenced your perspective on signing and developing artists?
It goes back to most friends of mine that are A&R people at other companies, not that they're chasing, but a lot of the job is chasing like something that's happened to be popping off at that moment, and we're never in that position because that's not what we look for at all. And we may like an artist that happens to have a song that's connecting in a big way really fast by one song, but it would still come down to meeting with them and sitting down and talking about their future and where they see themselves going and hearing more songs. like I said on the panel, we usually are signing things that nobody else is interested in signing because it's so early. But then we help grow and develop them together, and we give them beautiful spaces. We have Shangri-La in Malibu. We have another spot that we use in Burbank, but we give them the most comfortable places to create and help them make the best music they can possibly make.
It's amazing.
I want to ask you about your criteria with regards. You mentioned that a lot of the signings you'll do early. They're not necessarily things other people want, but you'll sign them to the publishing company. What determines signing somebody to the publishing company versus we're going to make a record with this artist? I mean, there must be a distinction in the criteria for you where you're saying, yeah, we're going to move ahead with the recording and put this out versus the publishing.
There kind of is. I think it has a lot to do with Rick, where most of the artists that we have signed to American recordings are produced by Rick Rubin. He doesn't have a lot of time to produce a lot of records, although he's always producing. So we end up, and sometimes when we find the artist early on, they're not ready to have a Rick Rubin produced album. So that's what I love about the publishing company, because it's purely creative and just helping the artist grow and write better songs and collaborating with people. And then at the right moment, Rick can come in and do a record with them. Sometimes, doesn't always happen. Sometimes that is a path for our artists, and sometimes it's not. But I think it has a lot to do with him wanting to produce, to put it on American recordings. That's why I love that we started American Songs, I think it's like 10 years ago now, or 12 years ago, something like that. But it's been great for us for development reasons.
So not every artist that comes through the door is getting a deal through American Songs. It's just certain ones, or everybody does when they come through the door in terms of signing deals?
I mean, most of the time, it starts with the publishing company. But there have been things, like we recently signed Marcus King a few years back, and we signed Marcus initially for publishing, but then literally, I didn't even know if his deal was up with another label. And then the manager called me and said, hey, just so you know, our deal just ended on the master side of things if you're interested in that. And that was somebody that Rick really wanted to produce and loved Marcus. So that's what we did.
Yeah, it was more advanced.
Yeah.
Kind of situation.
Excellent.
Right, exactly. Marcus was way more advanced in his career.
Yeah, more developed.
Yeah.
Michael, with the rise of so many varied independent artists breaking through, do you see that this is changing the type of acts that can break through today?
I think, again, for me, we just we're kind of have a tunnel vision, and we're kind of looking for specific types of artists that not only that myself and Isaac, who we work closely with, look for, but also we know after 15, 16 years with Rick, we know what he's looking for. So I think with social media, certainly a lot of acts have an opportunity to break through way more easily than they have in the past. So I think that's a bonus. I actually I'll go down the rabbit hole on TikTok, all day long. But it's amazing because you could, just like you can upload music, you can upload a video performing, and I love it.
Okay.
I think it's better than ever right now for artists to expose themselves to the world easily.
Yeah. There's
in
that
a fast amount of time.
There's that famous expression that the good news for artists is that there's no more gatekeepers.
Right.
The bad news for artists is that there's no more gates.
Right. Yeah.
And that creates its own set of challenges. Yeah. Let me ask you, as an A&R executive, what proportion of your time is spent looking after the new acts versus building and maintaining the careers of the acts already signed to the label, in terms of the balance?
Yeah. I just feel that it's literally 24 hours a day for me, And we could be talking about signing somebody, talking about meeting somebody for the first time, and helping an artist that's already signed. So it's just nonstop. And it's probably equal, 50-50 of dealing with artists that are signed to our publishing company and label and dealing with new incoming. But yeah, it's nonstop. We never stop.
Okay. All right.
Michael, has the definition of success changed today for artists?
Again, that's a somebody asked that question today on the panel.
I did.
That's why.
I feel that we have been trained by Rick that just releasing music, it's a success. Is the audience going to react? Who knows? But we're really just working with artists that we love and try to support them and help them grow in any way possible. Is it going to sell out Staples Center? Who knows? That's not. We don't go into it looking
based on those
that.
metrics.
Yeah, we don't at all. We're just looking at artists that we love and we want to support, and that's it.
Yeah, and many of the projects that Rick has been involved with over the years do play Staples Centers. Maybe they didn't when he started, but they do. I mean, you look at like one of his most successful albums, size-wise, was the Adele album.
Right.
And then you look at Chili Peppers, and then you look at, so many different,
Slayer.
great Slayer, or the Johnny Cash work, or
Black
things
Crows.
like that. Yeah.
On
A
and
lot of
on.
our stuff is like I said, usually people are not interested because it's so early, but then it's so left of center. But then not all of them, but some of them end up becoming
part of the
mainstream.
culture.
Yes. And he talks about that. This is, Michael, I want to ask you, and we've talked about this. You were one of the producers of Shangri-La, which to me was one of the most compelling, creative, and insightful documentaries ever made on the subject of creativity. And I'm curious if you could talk to us about what was the inspiration behind making it.
I think it was Isaac and I being in the studio and around Rick for a bunch of years, and we just felt like at some point people should have a peek behind the curtain and see what Rick does, because we're every day we get inspired by something he says or something he does, even working with him for a bunch of years. So it was just the right moment where it all came together. And it all worked out, but it was. We were working on that, I think, for like 7 or 8 years, talking about it, and then it just happened.
The filming of it finally did. Yeah, I mean, it's
unbelievable.
It is unbelievable because you really captured.
Sorry for cutting you off.
Go ahead.
But every time that we were in the studio, we both, Isaac and I, were looking like, people should see this. This is like amazing.
Yeah,
it
truly is.
And then it finally.
You use that for your classes. I mean,
I was telling Michael that, and one of the things he revealed is that there are 2 more segments that never got released.
Right.
Really?
And and I'm telling you, that I've seen it like 25 times at least, because it's mandatory viewing for my classes, and we, really use it as an understanding of, the mantra that Rick has, which is I know nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a very deeply philosophical consciousness around creativity, and he lives that. He doesn't just say it, he lives that. And the way that he approaches that, I think throughout the documentary, is masterful, and it's a real lesson for why. I mean, you have in the documentary so many people trying to understand, well, how could he do Slayer, and how could he do Chili Peppers, and Adele, and Justin Timberlake, and
Johnny Cash,
and he talks about, what was it that made him want to do Johnny Cash, and the philosophical reasons, and how he was doing too much of the new first records at that time in his life. And that was around the time that I first met him. I met Rick by inviting him. Ironically, I got Phil Spector to give the commencement speech to a school that I was teaching at that time, and I thought, who would be interested to come see this? It was only his 3rd appearance in like 30 years, Phil. And I invited Rick. And lo and behold, he responded and said, "I'd love to come." And he had a great night. He can tell you about it. I don't know if he's ever told you about it. He can tell you about the night that, I invited him, and he had this night with Phil Spector. They hung out afterwards and had drinks and yada, yada, yada.
Amazing.
But, and of course he's utilized in the documentary, talked about with relation to the whole Ramones situation. But just the way that documentary captures what creativity is about. And most importantly for me is, how does Rick
bring that out of it?
That out in people? Because you don't just say, all right, we're in the studio, go.
Yeah.
It doesn't work like that.
I think for,
And you know that, having worked with him.
Yeah, Rick has his process, but Isaac and I, when we're starting a relationship with a new artist that we signed to the publishing company, we sit them down in our studio and we talk about just how we can help support them in any way we can. If there's people they want to collaborate with that they can't get a hold of, we make a wish list and we just start to check it off and introduce them to people. We give them great, amazing studios to create songs. Shangri-La. Yeah. We have this other space in Burbank that we use a lot that Pulse has for us, because we have our publishing company with Pulse. And but they have the freedom to go in there anytime they want. They book the studio and they go, and just supporting them, just songwriting and introducing them to people and collaborations and anything they need. If they want our opinion to listen to songs and give them our thoughts, certainly. But that's not really what we do. We just really support them. When we sign an artist, we know they're the type of artist that it's almost like they don't need any help.
Right. Because they're so self-sufficient and that's not going to be shit that they're putting out.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's really we just support. Wow. We're here to serve the artist in any way we can. And it's just long-term, there's no time limit. Our publishing deals are 3-year terms, and most of them continue to re-up. Yeah. And it just works. It's like most of our artists on our publishing roster, it took almost 10 years to break.
Wow.
6, 7, 8, 10. It's like it takes a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's rare that a company
and determined
that's still out there that does that kind of artist development and belief in the artist to let them do their thing and just trust that it's going to, break through. That's great. That's unbelievable. Let me ask you, Michael, do you find that artists today are more aware and knowledgeable about their chosen career path than in the past?
I do. Yeah, for sure. I think it all just comes down for the social media of it all, and the ease of uploading songs on streaming services. And they, I think they're definitely more educated. When I was going to school, there was maybe 2 schools in the country that had music programs, and now every school has a music. And so they're way more educated. Yeah. There's way more information out there in general.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, David Geffen, I think, was the first one to start a music business studies program in 1975 in L.A. I mean, he was like one of the first. Yeah.
Right, I didn't even know that.
One of the music business. Yeah. One of the first people to do it, and he actually taught the class.
Right.
And,
And what school?
UCLA.
Oh, great.
He did it at UCLA as like part of the extension thing. And it was brand new then. I mean, that whole concept.
Right.
Like what you're talking, and it was very, very unique.
Yeah, they had one early on, that's right. I remember when I first came out here 30 years ago, I went to go see a couple people speak
at UCS. Yeah. I taught at that program in the late 80s and early 90s. But yeah, he was the one that kind of invented that whole thing.
Right.
Which I thought was really,
and now they're all
really
over
interesting.
The place.
Yeah. Very much so. Michael, let me ask you, besides the incredible documentary that you were involved with in producing, are there any other books or movies that have really inspired you in your lifetime, professionally speaking, that you can recommend to our audience?
For music business stuff?
Music or anything that's inspired
film or
you?
art, that really have just inspired you and thought, this is really, that we can share.
I don't know. I watch like silly stuff when I'm watching movies, like a lot of great comedies. But I'm trying to think if there's one that inspired me. I don't know. I don't know right now. I'd have to think about it.
All right.
As far as inspiration from.
Okay.
Do
you watch any of the other documentaries, like on the music business?
I mean, I love documentaries on.
Well, having made one of the great ones,
on just old bands,
Right.
I love those. But I'm trying to think of. I love the A&M Records documentary.
Okay.
That was a great one.
Yes.
Because they kind of had the same mentality,
right,
as we do.
Started in a little garage in Hollywood, with $800 borrowed dollars.
Right.
Very similar to the story that Berry Gordy tells about the forming of Motown.
Right.
He took a little loan from his family in '59 to start, Tamala, which became Motown.
Right.
But look what it became.
Yeah, that was a great one. I love that whole history of A&M Records.
Right.
It felt that way too when you would go on the lot.
Yes. Yeah, I have a very big affinity for A&M. I started my career there on that lot as an intern.
Right.
And, I used to see Herb and Jerry, and, they'd come around, and it was this whole kind of, they built that, and there was such history in that lot.
Yeah.
With the movies and Chaplin owning
Right.
it in the 20s, and, and it's now a historical landmark.
Right.
You can't they'll never be able to tear it down.
Yeah.
They can make
I used to
minor
go there
improvements.
for the studios.
The what?
The A&M Studios.
Yeah.
Oh, no, Hanson.
Hanson,
yeah.
right. Exactly.
Michael, what advice can you offer our artists who are serious about building a career in today's landscape? What would you recommend?
I mean, just if you're passionate and just continue to write songs. I mean, it's so hard for me to say because I'm not an artist, and we do just support artists any way we can. I always tell, because some people just want a fast trip to success, whatever that means.
Yeah.
And you can do the beginning steps all by yourself, just releasing music. So many artists that I meet with that are young, probably even too soon for even us to look at it, and we look early, but just release songs or video clips, or just start the process, do live shows. Like so many, like someone talked about it today, it's like their first show after releasing a song and it going crazy on TikTok or anything. But I know it's just about being active, and just if that means dropping songs, doing shows, doing video pieces, short form video, just being active. That's all I can say. It's like you don't know when it's going to come, but you'll know you're ready when people start reaching out to you. It's just your songs will start to connect with people, and managers will reach out, lawyers will reach out, record executives will reach out. You'll know you're ready when you're ready. And it's not, who knows, some people it could take 3 months, some it could take 10 years. And then people start reaching out because they're doing something that's really starting to connect. But yeah, I think the only thing I could think of is active.
Staying active.
Yeah, staying active.
Okay. Michael, we cannot thank you enough for staying and
Thank
doing
you.
this. I really, really appreciate it. We both do.
Yeah.
Really.
Thank you
from
so
the bottom
much.
of my heart. And
Great.
it's so great meeting you finally. And
Yeah.
I've been a fan of your work, and I think it's so important.
Awesome.
And it's made such an incredible contribution.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. What an interesting, insightful interview. Wow.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
Really enjoyed that. Michael is such an interesting guy because here we have an A&R executive who has, plenty of credits. And, some of the things that I thought were so interesting about this conversation, Eric, was how he talked about, the time spent with new acts, versus building and maintaining the acts that they already have. And that gets into the whole thing of, signing acts prior to publishing deals, before recording them.
Right.
Working with them in that
The
regard.
development stage, I think that's one of the big aspects that I think drives American is the whole idea of artist development, which is
yes, and
an art form that is sorely missed.
Well, it is because so much of talent and art needs to be developed.
Right.
And what we've done in this modern age, which is kind of a shame, is we've put all that back on the artist and said, no, you got to do that on your own.
Right.
And, if an artist doesn't know how to do that on their own or whatever, they're kind of like, out of luck. So that was an interesting point, I thought.
I loved how he spoke about how oftentimes his creative relationships begin with artists by signing them to the publishing company, which we were talking about at the top of the show, rather than the record label, and developing that aspect first so there can be a revenue stream already starting to come in. Because as we know, when you're writing and you're placing songs, it might be 1-2 years before you start seeing that money coming through that pipeline.
Absolutely, yes. And again, that's all about refining and developing creatively the writing aspect. So that tells you something right there about the culture of that company, of Rick Rubin's company, that, he's looking for people who write. And when you look at his credits as a producer and as an executive in terms of the people he signed to his label, as far as the label signings, I can't think of one was
a bomb or anything like that.
Well, no, not necessarily even a bomb, but just one that didn't write. He's produced artists who don't write.
Right.
Like the Dixie Chicks.
Yeah.
But that was like very rare. And maybe they came up with their own material. Maybe I'm not sure how that particular situation worked.
Right.
But every other artist that I can think of that he's worked with,
they're writers.
Yeah, and that goes right to your point that you were discussing. Also, of course, talking to him, which I had really wanted to do when we were going to do this interview, was talking about the inspiration behind Shangri-La. Right. I'm kind of a nerd on those kinds of documentaries. I've seen them all, and as I said in the conversation, if you recall, capturing and talking about the creative process on film and doing it well is a very, very hard thing to do. Because if you don't know what you're doing in terms of how to present that, it can be awfully dull for the person watching. Shangri-La does it brilliantly. Springsteen's documentaries on his albums that they've done, there's been like 4, The Born to Run, brilliantly.
The Aerosmith Making of Pump is one that we've talked about several times.
Yes.
We talked about John Kolodner, one of our first guests on the show. That one captures the fiery nature of artists and the clashing of artists
in the creation of
process. That's one that I really recommend. It's The Making of Pump. That's a really, really great documentary.
Yes, and another one that's a really great one is Beyonce's Homecoming.
Yes.
Where it's not about the performance. It's not a documentary. It's not a thing where you're going to see her live in concert. There's clips of that.
Yes.
But it's all about how do you put a show like that together? What's the creative process of putting a show like that for 9 months, and you get to see that process. And and if you're interested in that kind of thing from an artistic point of view, you will find it very, very interesting.
Yeah, and one of the other points that I thought was really, really cool was what he's learned working from Rick Rubin. I mean, we've talked about Rick so much, and I think the power of his influence and how it's rubbed off on people, just with, the idea of Shangri-La and how that's been such an influential thing, and
his book.
And his book, yeah. And when you think about the artists that he has, either signed or been involved with working, they've go to one extreme to another. And and just to be able to, it gets back to the breadth of how much music he's influenced by, but I think just how he can level up these artists. I think he's taken all of these artists from where they were at and brought them to a next level thing.
Absolutely, and what's interesting about what you were saying, Eric, is because that's a point that's brought up a lot in the documentary. What you just said. And the most interesting part is that I think I came away, and I've seen the documentary probably 15, 20 times because I show it to my students a lot, is the fact that I don't believe his skill set necessarily has anything to do with genre.
Right.
Like, Rick can only do heavy metal. Rick can only do R&B.
Well, he's done it all. He's done everything.
That's the point. So he doesn't feel that his success has anything to do with the genre. It has to do with a whole separate set of qualities and criteria that have nothing to do with the style of music that the artist is about.
Hey, Insiders. Thanks so much for tuning into this episode. We really appreciate it. To get show notes, links, and everything that was mentioned during this interview, head on over to our official website at MUBUTV.com/podcast/show notes. If you're enjoying the content and what we're doing here on the show, please subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts from. And don't forget to rate and review our show at iTunes. 5-star reviews are always welcome and help to ensure that our podcast stands out on the top-rated and new and noteworthy charts on iTunes and our space. You can also find us at social media at Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter X, all ending with the handle MUBUTV, which is spelled MUBUTV. Don't forget to catch our flagship show, the MUBUTV Music Business Insider video series, airing every week on YouTube at youtube.com/MUBUTV. This show was produced and created by Rich Ezra and Eric Knight. Theme music by Disciples of Babylon, and be sure to tune in next week for another episode of the MUBUTV Music Business Insider Podcast.